Hello, everybody. Welcome to our very last boot camp session. If you've made it this far, congrats. Hopefully, you're feeling much better about your application than we did at the beginning. This is our last session. We've got an awesome host for you tonight in Mitchell. We got a ton of questions about letters of recommendation last time, Mitchell. This is a hot topic, and I'm excited to go through it. Let's give it about 20 seconds, and then we can get started. As always, I think we're all on Zoom a lot these days, hopefully less than previous years. So if you are in a place where you can come off camera and be engaged, we would love to see your faces, but no pressure. Thanks for being here. Mitchell, let's get started.
Hey, sounds great. Hi, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Hopefully, this can be a really insightful session. And honestly, I think this will be something about your application that could definitely set you apart. I'll introduce myself a bit, and then we can go through all the pieces of the recommendation and how we're going to help you all prepare those and make sure that that's a highlight in your application to BYU. All right, so as far as logistics go, please raise your hand if you have a question you would like to ask. We'd love to hear from you all, and we want to answer your questions. So please feel free to raise your hand, and we'll address those questions. Also, Amelia is following the chat, so if you want to throw things in there, you can use that functionality as well. Please be respectful of everyone here and supportive. We're all trying to accomplish great things, so be kind to everyone. Take notes as well. We'll have a recording for you available, but please take notes. This will be important as we go through, so you can start writing what's coming to mind about the recommenders that we talk about. And again, this is something all of us are very passionate about. We want to be able to help you achieve your goals. So let us know how we can help you, and we'll do our best to get you there. So just to introduce myself a bit, my name is Mitchell Cordy. I am a BYU alumnus. I studied there. We were just talking about, I started there in 2016. All throughout college, I worked at the admissions within the admissions branch of BYU in enrollment services, and I was one of the guys that took people on golf cart tours of campus and showed them around, helped them learn about the process of applying to BYU and what it would take to get there and what life would look like once you arrive on campus. So I've done over 300 of those tours. It was a great time, and I'm really grateful that I got to meet so many spectacular people and hear their stories. And I'm definitely an advocate of the idea that each of you has a great story to tell, and I hope you've been able to figure that out as you have thought through your essays, and hopefully we can find other spectacular people to write recommendations for you, to harp on that same idea of how great you are. So I feel blessed to be able to help others learn about BYU. I hope that you will later be blessed by BYU as well. I currently work at Accenture. I do technology consulting. It's a good life. Okay, so you have talked a ton about the BYU aims. You've figured out what makes you unique and how to craft your specific story. I hope that you've figured out your highlights or greatest hits. And today we're going to figure out how others can help write that same story about you. Anyone can write a great story about themselves, right? But getting others to write a wonderful story about you is what we're going to perfect today. Oops. Okay. So as far as recommendations go, you'll have 3 recommenders that you'll need to identify. Okay. First one is your seminary teacher, if you're attending seminary. This has to be your teacher from your senior year. So for those that are just kicking off their senior year of high school, I hope you've been nice to your seminary teacher. And I hope that you're participating. I'm currently teaching seminary, and I have already identified students that I feel like I could write a great recommendation for. And I hope that you're doing the same thing, building a relationship with your seminary teacher, so they can write a great recommendation. High school teacher recommendation as well. This is a junior or senior year teacher who needs to have taught a core class. So math, science, social studies, or English. No other electives or extracurricular coaches, things like that. We're talking about a core class, junior, senior year. And then another recommendation can be a church leader, sports coach, school principal, music instructor, anyone else that is not a relative but knows you well. I think that's a big highlight. Let's see.
There's a quick question in the chat, Mitchell, about these seminary recommendations. You as the seminary teacher are automatically sent that recommendation, right? Do people have to, if people are asking if I have two, do I get to choose which one? Or if I had a good one last year, can I go with that one? This is automatically facilitated by the school, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't checked into it in the last year. But usually if you have multiple, yes, you can choose which one. And it's just by going to endorse.byu.edu, similar to your ecclesiastical endorsement, I believe.
Awesome. People are also asking about if they are homeschooled. Do you know anything about that? There's also, for some of these mechanics or specifics, you can always call the admissions officer. There's information online, and if not, you can call the office. But Mitchell, have you worked with anyone who's been homeschooled?
Yeah, I don't remember specifics about homeschool with seminary. I'm sorry, I would recommend you talk to enrollment services at BYU.
I will send, I pulled this up for someone else the other day. I will send the BYU admissions phone number in the chat. So if you do have some of these more specific questions about your individual circumstances, would highly recommend giving them a call. For math, I believe it's a core math class. Like they want the purpose of math, science, social studies, English is they want a core teacher. Someone was asking if I can do like my finance math or my business stats, and I believe it has to be a core teacher. Am I correct about that, Mitchell?
Yes, yeah, you are.
Okay, I think those are all the ones right now. These are the three letters of recommendation that you need. So you don't need to submit extras. Again, the seminary one is automatically sent. So these are the three that you'll be needing. Let's keep it running, Mitchell.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, the other recommendation as well can kind of be a wild card again. So if you do have another seminary teacher or another core class teacher that you would like to send that recommendation to, by all means, go for it. I also would say that it doesn't matter who these people are. I had plenty of people saying, what if I could get a general authority to write my recommendation, or Zach Wilson, the ex-quarterback for BYU? Is that going to help my case? No, it just make sure they write great recommendations about you.
Let me just double down on that, Mitchell, because this is a question we get all the time of like, what if I get a seven? Like, my dad is friends with the 70, and what if he writes my letter of recommendation? The position that they hold is so much less important than if they actually know you. The best letters of recommendation in the world are the people that like really, really actually know who you are deeply and can testify to your strengths and have specific anecdotes and like feel passionately about who you are as a person. So be careful about going after someone with a title versus someone that actually knows you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I would say as well, just as far as getting to know you goes, you have done a lot of the hard work in building your character and the relationship with these people. Hopefully by this point in your life, all of that hard work is done. You just need to get them to put it on paper. Hopefully there are plenty of people that know how exceptional you are. They have good stories that they've experienced with you. They just need to put it on paper, and that's what we'll help them do. Okay. All right, so as far as the process goes, it's rather straightforward. First of all, we're going to help we'll talk you through this process tonight. We'll help you select the recommenders and figure out who those people would be. Again, as I mentioned, if you have something to write with, start writing some names down, and we can probably help you figure out who would be best, and maybe you need to take a few days to think about who those people could be. But start writing a few names down who you think could be a good recommender for each of those categories. And then today, what we'll show you and help you prepare is a recommender packet. We'll talk more about that. But essentially, it's just a guide to help all of your recommenders do this job really easily. Of course, you can imagine that there are seminary teachers and teachers at school that have plenty of letters of recommendation to write, right? If you are able to work through this packet, it will help you stand apart from other people that are just blindly sending letters of recommendation to their teachers, and that'll help them just write a better recommendation for you as well. Once you share that packet, it's really easy. You just put their name and email in the system, and it sends them the recommendation option directly. You don't have to do anything except be persistent and make sure that they complete the recommendation from there on. As soon as they complete the recommendation, BYU will notify you as soon as it's submitted. And again, just make sure that you're tracking deadlines and who you still need to get a submission from. So yeah, that's what we'll work through today. This is a really interesting matrix that I found to be really interesting. This is the form that recommenders are asked to fill out as they go through this process. And as you look at these headers on the columns up top, it's interesting to see that below average and average are just two of these many categories. Then they want to know, are you in the top 30%, 10, 5, or 1%? Which I think is pretty spectacular and makes this kind of a rigorous process. I'll go through and read these because I think it's really interesting to see what BYU is trying to gauge here. So first of all, resolves concerns without parental intervention. They're trying to figure out if you're independent and you can do well on your own. Demonstrates integrity, trustworthiness, fulfills commitments. If you're, again, a person of integrity, trustworthy, going to do what you say you'll do. Makes it safe for peers to participate and share observations. You can create a wholesome environment, that you're kind to others, and then sets and achieves challenging goals. Again, BYU is a rigorous place, and I definitely don't believe that it's for everyone. So they want to make sure that you're going to be a good fit, and BYU will be a good place for you to thrive. So make sure that you can push yourself to learn.
Yeah.
And then proactively seek help. Go ahead.
Sorry, finish your thought, and then I'm going to ask them a question in the chat.
Yeah. Proactively seeking help when facing a challenge. They just want to know, are you humble enough to seek help when you need it? Because you probably will.
Love it. Guys, we've done a ton of, we went through the aims, as Mitchell said. We did a lot of essay stuff. Last week we talked about the activities. Now you're seeing a little bit of what BYU is looking for with the recommendations specifically. Put in the chat, based on what you're seeing here, what are some patterns? Or again, last session I asked you to pay close attention to the language and stuff. Pay attention to the language here. What do you think, what is BYU looking for in these? I'll share some of them for you, Mitchell, and get your thoughts on them. Someone said behavior, self-reliance, the ability to work for self or improve, good morals, being humbled, and how you improve resilience, independent, intent, top tier BYU potential, proactive. Do you think these are some of the themes that BYU is looking for? What stands out to you, Mitchell, at kind of a higher pattern recognition level here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are all spot on. Not everyone is a good fit at BYU, like I mentioned, but it's a spectacular place, and I think it's it's an amazing place to be able to study and be able to mix a spiritual growth side of things with an intellectually rigorous education. I think it's amazing to consider that you are probably already one of great students at your school and wherever you live. And if you were able to come to BYU, you'll be surrounded by people just like that. So it's an incredible place. And yes, BYU wants to make sure that you're going to do well there and that you won't feel out of place. I think finding a great school is figuring out the proper match more than anything.
Awesome. I love that. I would also say when you are considering, we're going to go through how to choose your recommenders. When we go through that, think about these things. I think it can be helpful if you're having trouble thinking about who your recommenders could be. Think about who are people in your life that could say, hey, I'm seeing Simon on the screen. Hey, Simon resolves concerns without parental intervention, or uh, Fallon sets and achieves challenging goals. Like think about people in your lives that actually that may have seen these traits, and that can be a good way to narrow down who your recommenders will be. But this is important. This is what BYU is looking for, not only in the recommenders, especially in the recommenders, but also in the other parts of your application. Thanks, Mitchell.
Yeah. So go ahead and take a second to think about what BYU is trying to gauge right here. Those characteristics, and now you know who the recommenders need to be. Try and figure out if you have a good match, and see if you can consider or remember a good story that you have or an experience that you could share with these recommenders, um, that they could write about and advocate for these specific characteristics. Just take a few seconds to think about that. Okay, as you're doing that, also consider these different columns and what these recommenders are going to have to fill out. Consider, do you make it a safe place for peers to participate and share observations? And then compare yourself kind of to others around you or that are in similar circles as you. Do you think you're in the top 30%, or perhaps you're in the top 1%? Is there very few people that you could think of that are that kind that make your peers feel like it's a very safe place? And see which ones are applicable. Again, as you're picking these recommenders, I think is really important because they need to be able to explain exactly how you've exemplified these characteristics.
Mitchell, I think if I remember back to when I was in high school, way, way, way long ago. And I think if I had looked at this then, I would have been nervous that I don't think I'm the top 1% across every one of these. Maybe one or maybe two, I'm top 1%, but I'm definitely not top percent at all of them. Is that the expectation? If I don't feel like I am excellent even in all of these, is that a red flag? How do I think about making sure that I'm showing my best case here and setting myself up for success?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that anyone is in the top 1% of all of these. And I think that's totally healthy. Um, I don't feel like I am top percent of maybe any of these, but I do feel like I'm more of a jack of all trades, master of none type of person. And I think that's okay. And BYU wants those type of people as well. Um, Again, this application, the words that I heard so much while I was working in the admissions office was we take a look at the holistic student. We do a holistic process. We're looking at the entire body of work. They are not going to make a decision because you're average about resolving concerns without parental intervention. but they want to see some great essays. They want to see some great recommendations, and they're going to want to see what you have done in high school to prove that you belong somewhere like BYU.
I love that. Oh, Mitchell, when you were a student admissions officer, did you see? I'm thinking about we've talked in the essay session about how it's nice to have themes for your application that correspond to where you spike. You know, what are you very, very good at? What do you bring to BYU? If your application has themes of challenging goals, like challenging yourself and always trying to push yourself, it probably helps for your recommenders to make sure that those characteristics that you're highlighting in your recommendation are mirrored in your essays. Should applicants be thinking about that cohesion between the recommendations and essays, or is that kind of an unnecessary point?
I think that's a great idea because you've probably come to realize what your strengths are as you're writing your essays. And I think those are the same characteristics, or at least similar characteristics, that you are going to want your recommenders to harp on, right? Um, so yes, I think you need to play to your strengths, and it's okay if you're not, again, top 5 or 10% in each of these categories. Um, just talk about what you've done that's exceptional and why you feel like you could make a difference at BYU.
I love that point of play to your strengths. Yeah, we should remember that as we continue.
Yeah, so great point. Keep a steady tone and talk about what you wrote about in your essays are probably going to be the same things you write about here in the recommendations. Okay. All right, so here's a few recommender specific questions. These are interesting to see because again, they're trying to gauge specific things for each of these teachers or recommenders. So the seminary teacher, first of all, rate the student on the following items. Demonstrate seminary attendance and participation is a high priority. Demonstrates that studying the gospel is a high priority. So obviously, prioritizing spirituality and growth in that aspect is big for BYU. It doesn't necessarily need to be LDS faith spirituality. We just want BYU wants to be able to see people grow spiritually, and studying those types of things needs to be a priority in your life. And then is there anything else that we should know about the applicant? I was thinking about this from a seminary teacher's perspective. I think this is really interesting. What would I gauge as a seminary teacher that I feel like BYU should know, that I wouldn't already write in my recommendation? And maybe that's something that you should help the recommenders prepare for as well. Is there something that they won't know as your seminary teacher that they should? Or is there something maybe you should start sharing in seminary class that would be helpful for them to know and eventually share about you? Something to think about as you go to seminary. Okay, and then for a high school teacher, rate the student on the following items. Assignments are high quality, turned in on time. Larger assignments are well prepared, planned, and not hastily completed. So are you organized, can put things in a structured format, problem solving ability and sound thinking, proactively seeks help when facing a challenge. This just reminded me of my experience at BYU. I feel like it took me far too long to realize that homework was best done with other students from my classes or with teachers' assistants. And as soon as I learned to proactively seek help from others, I had a much better experience. My education seemed to just fall in my lap much easier than it used to. And I feel like those who are proactive in asking questions will do best. And then that last question, what evidence do you see of the applicant challenging themselves academically? Again, I think this is a really interesting question because teachers that are maybe just teaching math or social studies may not know a ton about you. So how do they know how you're challenging yourself? academically. Maybe that means you need to start talking to your teachers more often and coming to them with questions, maybe looking a bit ahead in your textbook to try and understand some complex principles before you talk about them in class. I feel like those are things that I learned to do in college, and I wish I would have learned to do them much earlier.
It's interesting to me, Mitchell, how often this like overcoming a challenge is repeated across the BYU application. It's in a few of, there's a specific essay about overcoming a challenge. We saw it in the last slide. It's in this slide multiple times. If I as an applicant don't necessarily feel like I have overcome any major challenges in my life to the extent that maybe it feels like BYU is looking for, how do I think about approaching this?
Yeah, I think you need to realize that there's a lot of people in that similar situation that feel similarly. Um, I remember even just after high school going on a mission and having people say, "You're 18 years old. What hard things have you had to do? You're from the United States." You know, like outside outsiders looking in may not see a lot, but you can craft a story that will help you figure out how you have evolved as a person. And it's not that they want to understand the level of challenge and compare it to others. They want to see how you have evolved, how you have changed and improved and built yourself to be the person that you are today. Um, it doesn't matter necessarily how your challenge compares to the person right next to you. They just want to know that you're willing to learn and that you can overcome obstacles that come your way.
I love that point. I think especially that makes it a lot easier to understand. I think that like what's the point of a challenge? Well, it's that you do something hard and that you become a different person as a result of it. I also think I've said this before, but we get lost in our own sauce. You would be surprised at the challenges that you have faced that you don't necessarily even recognize. And I think that's where talking to a coach like Mitchell or even your parents or friends and just like talking through some of your experiences, you will find things because you have done harder things than you think you have sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a funny thing that it reminds me of just these student tours I did at BYU. We would be together with these students for 50 to 60 minutes long, and quite frankly, a lot of them didn't want to talk to me very much, right? And a lot of times it was the parents trying to say, "Oh, well, my son or daughter did this thing and that thing," uh, and I hope that all of you have a person like that in your life that is willing to brag about you. But this is all about you bragging about yourself and getting others to brag about you. Um, so figure out what your story is, and yes, maybe it takes talking to others to figure out what you're really good at and what is different about you and your life that sets you apart from others. And there are, I'm thinking of a specific person that I took on a tour who felt like um, he had a something that he saw as a disability, and I said, I think that you can craft that into a story to make that a strength. And what you see as something that inhibits you, or maybe could be something that prevents you from being accepted into BYU, I think could be the exact reason that you are accepted and have proven that you can overcome hard things.
I love that example.
Okay, and then that last other recommender, what they have is rate the student on the following items: proactively seeks help when facing a challenge, sets and achieves challenging goals. We've talked about those plenty. Based on how you rated the applicant, please share a time you have observed this applicant setting and achieving a challenging goal. Be specific. Okay. So we'll talk about those specific stories and how to craft those. But again, as soon as you have a story that you're thinking about, write it down, and this should be a brainstorming exercise. So you come up with a few options, and hopefully throughout the rest of our time, we can start marking off the ones um, that aren't quite as good as the others. Okay. So this third section, successful BYU recommendations. We're going to start talking about exactly what BYU wants to see. Your recommenders must have a strong relationship with you. I think this is something that I felt like I was kind of missing on my initial application to many colleges, was building a strong relationship with the classes that were hardest for me in high school. And when I saw that, I felt a specific resolve to start talking to them more and building a relationship, helping them get to know me. And that helped me, not in all cases, but with a few specific teachers that still play a part in my life today. And I think those are well worth building. Complementary perspectives, obviously that is very important. Credible, yes, can't be a relative, especially your mom. Hopefully she'd just write incredible things about you. And this is something I think is perhaps hard to gauge. You need to find someone that's willing to write an incredible recommendation, okay? There are plenty of people that can probably write a pretty good recommendation, but you don't want a pretty good recommendation, right? So I think we'll talk about these packets in just a second that will prepare for these recommenders, and the difference between a good recommendation and a great one. You need to try and figure out, is there someone that knows you well enough that can write an outstanding, extraordinary recommendation? They should also just have a desire for you to succeed, and that should be evident, and I think it will be in their writing. And again, ability to speak to your strengths. How are we doing on questions in the chat? Anything we need to address?
I think we're doing good. It's a lot of questions about, can I ask my college professor if I'm taking college credit classes? For these one-off stuff, I really would recommend you can call the admissions office, or you can submit a form online if there are individual circumstances. There was someone that took only online courses, so I would double check with the admissions office. For parents, Mitchell, if your parent is a seminary teacher or a bishop or something, I believe that the system will know, or you can put in a note or something. Do you know what happens in that case?
I don't remember. I think that's still fine as far as like endorsements go with bishops or stake presidents. So I would assume that it's similar for seminary teachers.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we're good on. I'll keep answering some of the logistical questions in the chat, but I think we're good there. I also love, will you dig into, I love this like complementary perspectives one. I think that's really helpful when you're deciding not only who the individual recommenders should be, but how they work together to form that more cohesive application point that we've talked about. How do you think about evaluating whether people have a complementary perspective or not?
Yeah, it's hard to figure that out. I feel like there are specific people that I had interactions with that would always say, Mitchell, you're great at this thing, or I really appreciate you for doing this. And there's some people even today that I've had really good experiences with that I feel like are ultimately they're writing about experiences, right? And if you can remember a great experience you had with this person, it's as simple as just reminding them about what happened, and then being clear with your expectation, right? You're putting a ton of faith in this person to write you a recommendation to a competitive college, right? So talk to them about it. I don't want these recommenders to just be sent an email and say, oh, look, this person asked me to put a recommendation, but I haven't talked to them about it. What should I write about? I hope and expect that each of you will talk to these people in person, and align your expectations with theirs, because again, they're probably getting quite a few recommendations. You're probably not going to be the only one asking.
Plus one, ask them in person if at all possible. If you have only online teachers, yeah, your circumstances will be a little bit different. I also think, Mitchell, I loved your point of like you want people who will write you a good letter of recommendation. If you ask in person, you can gauge, I think this is one litmus test of many. It is not an end all be all, but one litmus test is see how they are reacting to you asking. You know, if you ask someone to write you a letter of recommendation, they're like, I'm so excited you're applying to BYU. I would love to help you, especially with your other recommender that's like your recommender. I think high school teachers, everyone, your teachers, they know they have to write recommendations. It's got to be a core teacher. It's a little bit, it's kind of more of a rigid structure. Same with seminary teacher. Your other recommender, especially, should be someone who is really, really, really willing to pound their fist on the table. Mine was my volleyball coach. And he like adored me. And so I knew that recommender, my other recommender, would be a really strong recommendation. And when I asked him to write me a letter, he was like, I'm going to write you the best letter of rec BYU has ever seen. That was obviously a really good reaction to have. And you don't necessarily need that level, but if the recommender that you're asking is excited to write you your letter, that's a good sign that it's one of many good signs that they're going to write you a good letter.
And I know that there are many cases where maybe you're new to a school or don't know these people very well. The great thing is it's only September 4th and you don't have to submit your application yet. So maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, go talk to these people. Make sure they understand who you are, why you're exceptional, and make sure they understand that you're trying to achieve all of these great goals and
True.
become something exceptional. You still have plenty of time to get to know them, but you need to start.
Yeah, you do need to start now. And also, if you're worried about one of your recommenders, go extra hard on the others. And I say that because I was a bad seminary student. I played 3 sports. I had a full load of classes like many of you, and this is an excuse and I shouldn't have, but I was a bad seminary student. And so I knew that it was going to be extra important that I found a core teacher and another recommender who were really, really excited. So it could if you don't see a recommendation, so I don't know how good my seminary recommendation was, but my other two, I had a lot of confidence in, and so sometimes they can offset each other if you're a little bit worried about one or the other.
Absolutely. And again, this is just a piece of the application. It's not going to, I can't remember even talking with people that would regularly review applications. I can't remember anyone saying this application was incredible, but there's one bad recommendation, right? I don't think that ever happened. And I don't think that was the deciding factor for anyone. So yeah, that's a good point. All right. So we're going to do a quick exercise. This is, it's going to have to be interactive, and I want you all to start thinking hard about who you're going to select. So again, we're talking about a seminary teacher from your senior year, a core class high school teacher from your junior senior year, so math, science, English, social studies, and then the wild card other that cannot be a relative. So again, we need to figure out what do recommendations accomplish. You need to have specific examples of excellence. They need to remember a story, remind them of it, and highlight how you compared to your peers again. Remember the little graphic of top 30, 10, 5, or 1%. How do you fit in? Consider your maybe young women's or young men's group. If there's 20 kids in young men's or young women's, are you truly one of 20 and top 5% or 1%, right? Help them try to figure that out and play to those strengths. You will want to recommend that they use really strong claims, and we'll talk about this in just a bit. But things like, this student is the best at, or I haven't seen another student do this well in all my years of teaching, right? Things like that are the difference between a decent recommendation and a great one. Make sure that they understand what it takes to be great at BYU and highlight the potential that you have to be successful at BYU. Again, I mentioned earlier just that I hope that everyone has a mom or grandma that always says things that seem to make you feel uncomfortable. Like I have a grandpa that always says, "Wow, you just made this. This was the best meal of my life. Thank you so much." And I figure out what you would be uncomfortable saying about yourself that others may be comfortable saying about you. I think those are important things to highlight. Make sure that credibility is established about you and maybe about them, but they need to be, this is all about you. They need to be talking about why you are exceptional. And then again, you're not expected to be perfect, right? You're not expected to be top 5 or 1% with everything. So make sure that they can write about the growth potential that they see in you, and make sure they understand the goals that you hope to achieve. Okay. These are a few specific examples that I think are really helpful and can make the difference between a good and a great recommendation. So this good one says, Jessica was one of the best students in my class. She worked hard, took great notes, learned quickly, and was an example to her peers. Right? If you read that, I'd be like, great, that's awesome. But the difference between great is interesting. Jessica was the best student I've had in my 12 years of teaching high school. She has an unmatched level of intellectual curiosity that drove me to prepare more deeply for my lessons. Right? I think that's exceptional, right? Who could say that about you? Those are the people you want to try and figure out, and you want to get writing like that on paper. Here's another one. Tanner was a great leader in young men's and helped the boys feel included. He has a good understanding of gospel concepts and a natural leadership ability. Again, outstanding things, but let's make it better. Tanner is the best young men's assistant I've worked with as a bishop. He consistently demonstrated maturity beyond his years through the lessons he taught, meetings he led, and the example he set to the class below him, right? I think just the difference of dictating natural leadership ability, they're saying you're able to be a leader, whereas later on in this great one, he's saying you led these, you did it, and it was a great example, right? Showing that you have already proven and done this is really good. And that will
Mitchell, these are
set
so
yours
good.
apart.
Yeah, I love these examples. I want to read these one more time. Let's read them one more time, and then guys, I want you to put in the chat what's the difference? Because the good is good. That is a good recommendation. As Mitchell said, you read that and you're like, yeah, this guy is good, but it's not great. Great. Jessica was the best student I've had in my 12 years of teaching high school. She has an unmatched level of intellectual curiosity that drove me to prepare more deeply for my lessons. Okay, let's go to the next one, Mitchell. Tanner is the best young men's assistant I've worked with as a bishop. He consistently demonstrated maturity beyond his years through the lessons he taught, meetings he led, and the example he set to the class below him. Okay, what makes the great great and not just good? Okay, Mitchell, here's some of the things that they're saying. More specific and absolute. They say they use the superlatives like best, how they're the best, why, how they've grown and impacted the recommender, gave specifics. Was to is, they changed the tense. That's interesting. It sounds more proactive and current. Best means that everyone else was below you. You stand out among the rest. It's the details. They were specific. It makes you, oh, I like this one. It makes you feel like you will be missing out on a fantastic student if you turn them down. It was a direct connection, superlative, strong language, went into more detail, used superlative specifics in the why. They're bragging for you, and it's kind of a one of a kind claim per recommender. These are great.
I love those. Those are great highlights. I want you all, this may be kind of odd, but write in the comments or in the chat, I want you to write something that you feel like someone could share about you, or maybe just an example if you don't want to share about you. What would be the difference between good to great? After you write it once, see if you can figure out, is there better, stronger language that I could put more emphasis on?
I
Start
love
throwing those in the chat. I'd love to hear some of those.
Write one, like draft what you think a recommender could say about you in one line, pause, look at it, see if you can make it any stronger with a specific detail or superlative, and then send it again. Pretend like you are the recommender, like talk about yourself in third person. Someone said they think their recommender could attest to how quickly they can pick themselves up after falling behind.
Yeah, I would say give a specific example about that. What happened to make them be able to attest to that?
Yep. Someone said she is kind, and same comment as Mitchell, like how were you kind? How did that impact your classroom? You know, did being kind, how did that manifest? What are the examples of you being kind that your recommender could potentially speak to? Um, he is the most proactive learner I have ever taught. He wants to learn more deeply in every subject. Truly a diamond in the rough.
That's great.
He is an amazing friend and always makes people feel included and welcomed.
Okay, I like that. What could we say besides amazing? What makes you an amazing friend? How have you proven that?
I
I
actually
think
love that point.
being very specific, rather than just sharing adjectives, is going to make a huge difference here. Again, big difference between the good and the great.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the point about amazing. Any adjective, like what does amazing mean? You know, if you use an adjective and you can't answer, well, what does that actually mean? Then cross it out, see if you can find one that's a little bit more descriptive. Someone's asking, well, what if I don't think I'm the best, or you know, like I don't want my recommender to lie to me. And I would say to that, these are strong examples in one case. There are attributes that you are better than the majority of the population at. Like we all spike in certain ways. And so it's about finding recommenders who can speak to your specific strengths. You're not asking them to lie. You're asking them to brag about the things that you are good at. And we're going to go into a recommended prep doc in a second that Mitchell will lead us through. That will help a lot. But know that we are not asking you to ask your recommenders to lie. That is not the case. You are asking them to highlight the best traits about you. There's a time and a place to get feedback and talk about the things that you're not so great at. This is not the place to do that. Would you add anything to that, Mitchell?
Yeah, I'll just say you will never see these recommendations, right? Uh, so you just need to do your best to help them remember those specific examples. And if you set the expectation of what the difference is between a good and great recommendation, that will help them write much better, right? Um, I think that these are good examples, and maybe you need to share these with them as well, so they can understand what your expectation is, and do something similar for you.
Yeah. And I loved Mitchell's point about sometimes the things that you think you are that are hurting you could actually be strengths. I saw someone in the chat moved every different high school each year. Am I cooked? I went to three different high schools and I still got really good letters of recommendation. And that was a strength because my recommender talked about how I came in as a new student and instantly made an impact in that new environment. So there, again, just because you think this thing is maybe tricky or not is going to hurt you in some way, doesn't necessarily mean that it will.
Yeah, I had a similar situation. I have lived in 8 states and moved 13 times by the time I went to BYU. So uh, it's that can be crafted into a good story, and I made it one for me as well. I feel like that allowed me to be able to figure out how to make friends and connect with people really quickly. And I have siblings that have moved twice in their life, and I think that we have lived very different lives, and I would never regret the way that I was raised because it's created me as the person I am today. So just figure out how to share that.
There's a lot of people. I moved 16 times before I got to BYU. There's also a huge long chat of other people that have moved a lot. So squad up. Someone
Nice.
is asking, there was a good question in here. Oh, someone did say, yeah, we never get to read the recommendations. No, you do not. You can, Mitchell, I don't know if you knew this. I found that you can request your recommendations after, like way after. So I thought about, I kind of wanted to go and get mine and go read them, but no,
Really?
you're not supposed to, you will not read them beforehand.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't know you could request them later. That'd be cool. Okay, so let's dive into building these packets. I hope that everyone has figured out a few people that you could create, make your recommenders. And I hope that you're considering specific examples that you've had with these people as we go through this document. Okay, so this recommender prep doc, it again prepares them for what to expect, makes your expectations pretty clear, communicates important deadlines about, make sure that they understand if you're trying to hit the priority deadline versus the hard deadline at the towards the end of the year. Gives them examples to pull from. Again, that's why we're writing these down. Shows them how serious you are. I think, again, just sharing this document will set you apart. Tells them what BYU wants. I think in many cases they won't understand. And so giving them additional context will be helpful. Drafts them onto your team. Controls without actual writing it. And then helps them jog their memory about the things that you all have lived together.
I just sent the link to it in the chat, BYU Recommender Prep Doc in all caps. I'll send it again in a sec, or you can individually chat me if you can't find it. It's a view only, so you'll go to File, make a copy, and then you will have your own editable version.
Yeah, I think it would be valuable that we share that. Maybe I'll pull that up real quick.
While he's pulling it up, let me say that this is for grad school also, but also for undergrad. This is doing this recommender prep doc and taking some time to invest in it. Don't underestimate what a difference this recommender prep doc. It's the difference between a very vague, I love this student, they were so great in my class, and really specific examples. Because your teachers, they have a lot of students, and they all kind of blur together, I think. So if you can do this recommender prep doc and set them up for success, it's going to go a long way toward making your your letters of recommendation better.
Thank you for that. That's true. Just sharing this with your recommenders is going to be huge. So again, this is a free resource from Leland. We'll go through a few things here I think are helpful. Hey there, we're excited to share our BYU Recommender Prep Doc with you. Actually, I'm going to skip this. This is straight from the Leland team. This is what you'll send to your specific recommenders. I think we'll go through this high school teacher one. Thanks again for all your help and support in this application process. Again, that means hopefully you've talked to them in person by now, right? They've agreed to be a recommender for you. This isn't their first time seeing this for you. I really appreciate your willingness to make time for this in your busy schedule. I wanted to create this document to, 1, provide more info on the current recommendation process, 2, offer some ideas for content, and 3, make this as easy and straightforward as possible. In the end, your authenticity and perspective will be the most important aspect of a strong letter, but I figured providing you with some direction would be helpful. Let me know if you have other questions. Okay. Again, deadline right here, priority deadline, November 1st. Recommendations are submitted via the school's online application system. I'll send your name and email to BYU, and they'll send an email with a link to the recommendation form. So again, remember the steps here. Talk to them in person first, share this document with them, then submit their name through the portal. And that form will ask you to rate me on a number of characteristics and answer some open-ended questions. We're talking about the aims. I think this is really important. They need to understand the goals of BYU and its education. I've created a list of attributes that I plan to highlight, again, in my essays, which you could reinforce as my recommender. Obviously, this is a personal view of my strengths. Feel free to amend or adjust any of these examples and add personal insights. Here are the characteristics that you'll be asked about. Okay. So as we're going through this right now, again, create a copy, put it on your own Word doc or Google Doc, whatever you choose to use, and start throwing in your strengths. Okay. Take a few minutes and we'll talk about that.
One thing I want to point out here too is you may hear from the language. You should have already asked your recommenders before you send them this packet. So the thing is the process here is you identify your recommenders based on a lot of what we've talked about today. You ask them, ideally in person if you can. You gauge their reaction. They say yes, yay. They can't wait to write your letter. Then I would say you could say something like I'll put together a little bit of a recommended prep, or I'll put together a packet to help inspire your letter, give you some examples of and help and kind of support your letter writing process. And then ideally you give that to them within like the next week, especially if you and this you should be doing this now, right, Mitchell? We're kind of on the clock. You have time, but I would get started on this process now.
Yeah, I think the only reason that I would hold a few weeks max is if you feel like you could still build a stronger relationship with someone that you don't know very well, but is required, like a seminary teacher that you don't really know well, they don't know you, or a core high school teacher. I would only postpone this or push it back a few weeks if you're going to take action and start talking to them one-on-one, asking additional questions after class, things like that. Okay, so just take a second and start adding your specific characteristics you want to highlight, your strengths, if you will.
When you're thinking about these strengths, guys, think also about for some pre-work for our previous sessions was doing your brag sheet, thinking about your theme as we talked about with Amanda. What's your like one-liner, right, for the application? You should be having, we challenge you to have conversations with your parents and your friends and other people in your life. Those strengths, as we're talking about, that cohesive line through your application that we've talked about, those are good things to include here. So some of these things may be new stuff that you're thinking about or strengths that you think the recommender that you're asking uniquely has insight into you, but you can also use the strengths that you've already started talking about in the rest of your application here too. That will also help build that one comprehensive application that Mitchell talked about at the beginning.
Okay. I'll just, hopefully this was rather clear, but just in case it's not, what is highlighted in green here is what you will need to edit. You may want to tweak a few other things, but I probably wouldn't if I were doing it. I would just add the name of the teacher. I would recommend that everyone submit by the priority deadline. Don't play with the last deadline. And then obviously add the examples. And then obviously your name at the bottom. So again, we have these for your seminary teacher at the top, high school teacher, and then the other recommender at the bottom. These are all very catered to those specific people. So use each of them. And then there's a few examples that you could go through as well to help you out if you're having some trouble. So again, please use this. It's a great resource for free. And I hope you all are able to create great prep docs with this.
That's a good example. Don't like make sure it sounds like you and don't use the example text in there. Don't use the example characteristics. Don't use the example stories because we've talked about this before. BYU admissions officers can sniff out inauthenticity like a rat. So make sure that everything that is in there is true and deeply personal or, really deep about who you specifically are. And I have seen people come to me with those BYU recommended prep docs and they're the exact examples. Don't do that.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. Okay, we'll just move on and hopefully you all can take that as homework. A few things that I want to make sure that we highlight here. I'll just share some examples about characteristics that you could highlight. Showing initiative, solving problems before parents or teachers even knew there was an issue, preparedness, foreseeing potential concerns, thinking ahead and preparing so those problems don't arise. Problem solving, identifying creative solutions, and being flexible when things take an unexpected turn. Leadership and teamwork, the ability to be a leader and a teammate who can positively influence others. Again, I want you all to remember these are characteristics. I want you to have specific stories that highlight these characteristics in yourself. And then share those specific examples. For the seminary teacher, examples related to church callings, service projects, doctrinal mastery. High school teacher, academic examples like very hard assignments, big projects, difficult classes, or test prep or performance on difficult tests. And then your other recommender, extracurriculars, sports, theater, debate, scouts, etc. Make sure that they understand the specific examples that you are thinking about in your head. Okay, again, another point, demonstrating integrity, trustworthiness, fulfills commitments. Ideas for examples that you could highlight are times you weren't afraid to be different, times that you sacrificed your own well-being for a specific cause that you feel strongly about, a situation when you realized or admitted that you were wrong. Again, these are all demonstrating how the survey they took at the beginning about how you fit comparing yourself to others. This is just going to attest to those attributes. Okay. I'll share a few final thoughts, and then we can open it up for Q&A afterwards. I will just say I feel like I've been at all points of the process through this BYU application, having done it myself and helping others, both formally and informally. And I think that this is a rigorous process, but yes, it may seem like you're spending a long time trying to prepare and do it right now. But being able to get into such a university as BYU is going to be a life changer. For me, it was. BYU is a great place. It's filled with exceptional people, and there's plenty of other great places and wonderful people in the world that don't reside in Provo, Utah. So I don't want anyone to be fixated on only BYU, and rather just focus on who you're trying to become and your greater goals. Hopefully you've been writing about that in your essay. Hopefully you're able to translate that to the prep doc so your recommenders can write about those characteristics in you. But I hope you're able to be great regardless of where this path takes you. Going to college is going to be a difficult process, but I think it will be well worth it for everyone that goes. I'm a strong believer that learning how to learn takes a long time, and I think college is a great place to do it, and especially at BYU. So I'll open it up for questions. Maybe we can go through the chat, but I'd love to hear if you want to come off mute and want to ask a question. We can do those live as well.
Put them in the chat, raise your hand like we did last time and come off mute. I would challenge y'all to think about questions that are potentially applicable to other people here. And if they are logistical questions about specific circumstances that you're facing, I would call the admissions office. Again, we're not going to be the most helpful on that front. Jesse, go for it.
So I have a lot of different people in many different areas of my life. Is there a possibility that I could do more than 3 letters, or would that be bad for?
I don't think it'd be bad, but it's not possible. So yeah, figure out, maybe talk to your parents or some other mentor of yours and try and figure out who would be the best. Maybe there's a difference between figuring out who's a great writer and who's not. Maybe there's just extraordinary experiences you've had with someone that you haven't had with others. But I'm glad to hear you have great mentors around you.
Yeah, I think Mitchell's
Thank you.
earlier points too about like complementariness of your recommenders, both with each other and with the application. You have more, it's not a bad problem to have, Jesse. You have more room to play with that, but it comes down to time. You know, they barely have enough time to review all the applicants anyways. And if you give them more things to read, it's just not doable. Mitchell, someone asked, how should we brag in quotes about being humble? And maybe I'll broaden this question to, I think bragging can feel uncomfortable, and sometimes I don't know the best parts of me. So how do I think about making sure that my recommenders are bragging about me and showing my best traits?
Yeah, I totally understand that. What I would say is go through this exercise with a loved one and help them figure out what to brag about in you, right? Like I said, I'm sure many of your mothers or someone else close to you would be quick to brag about how exceptional and perfect you feel, right? Or you are. You may not feel that way, but there are people that probably feel that about you. So talk to them, and I think that'll be really helpful.
Yeah, if you haven't done so already, what Mitchell's saying is true. Talk to people. You will get so many ideas. We also talked a little bit in the last session that when it comes to bragging, specifics help because if you give details and quantify things, you're not bragging, you're just stating the facts, right? You handed out 5,000 meals to homeless people. You're not bragging, you're telling them that you gave 5,000 meals. So it becomes a little bit easier, I think, to be objective if you're using stats and really getting into the details. Lily, tell us your question.
I'm just wondering if it would be better to have a church related person write the last letter of rec or somebody who's in sports, like a coach.
I would pick the one that knows you best.
Okay.
I, again, I think it all comes down to specific experiences that you've had, right? Maybe that's hard with someone at church, but maybe you've had a really cool experience. I'm just thinking of someone in a seminary class. One day, my car wouldn't start, and he stayed back with me to make sure I got my car jumped, and probably arrived late to school. But you bet I would write an exceptional recommendation letter for him because he demonstrated incredible characteristics.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right about it.
Yeah, when in doubt, the person that knows you best. And there are a few wrong answers here. Someone asked, "Can I ask a friend?" Would not ask a friend because they are not, they're just incentivized to write good things about you without any credibility behind them. Some examples I'll say, and then Mitchell, I would love to hear yours. With clients I've worked with, some of the ones I've heard, yeah, coach, orchestra teacher or band leader, young women, young men's leader, a teacher, another teacher, maybe a teacher outside of your core class, a language teacher, someone. I have seen bishop, I've seen like volunteer, someone was a volunteer and the person that oversaw the volunteers wrote their letter of recommendation. Employer can be one. There's a lot of options. Are there any that I'm missing that you've seen with clients, Mitchell, for that other recommender?
I think you're covering basically all of them. I think the guiding direction I would share is think about who you spend a lot of time with. Think about adults you spend a lot of time with, whether that's through extracurricular activities, or also think about who sees you in pretty vulnerable positions, whether that's really high, like through really high experiences, or really low, hard times, right? Think about who sees you in those instances, because they've learned a lot about you.
Awesome. Lily, your hand is still raised. Do you have another question?
Sorry, no, I'll lower that.
Okay, awesome. We got a question in the chat about if I have important experiences coming up that I want to write about, should I wait to ask my should I wait to ask my recommender or include them in my essays? But for this purpose, should I wait to ask my recommender until I've had those experiences that they would be a part of? Do I look like a procrastinator? What's your thought, Mitchell?
Um, I would probably not procrastinate unless it's something absolutely mind-blowing. Again, I feel like in most cases you have done the hard work of creating the perception of who you are for these people, right? By this point in time, there's probably not a ton more you can add. So I'd be curious to hear what this experience would be, but feel free to chime in if you want to add more.
Yeah.
But I would not procrastinate.
I'm with Mitchell. That would also be a good thing to, yeah, hop on a coaching call, like an official coaching call with, and they can dig into it with you. There's a question about how much time people spend on the officers spend on letters of rec. I may broaden the question for you, Mitchell, and say, what is the role that recommendations play in the whole application? How are they evaluating them? How much weight are they giving them compared to the essays and your GPA or test score?
Yeah, it's hard to say how things are weighted, and I will say that um, when I first started in admissions at BYU, there was a clear weighted average system that was quantified, um, and later on that was nixed entirely, and it was all about someone is going to read everything about your application. Yes, they do it pretty quickly because there's tons of applications that come in, but there are people all over BYU campus that sign up temporarily to review applications, faculty, that is, of course. And yes, they're supposed to go through every aspect of your application. I don't know how much time they spend on them, but I think I would definitely recommend that you submit everything as soon as possible, because they get a lot of recommendations or applications late.
Yeah. I love that. Two thoughts that I would add. Every other part of your application is from you. The letters of recommendation are the only part of the application really that is another person's perspective. So your essays are super important, as we've talked about, because they're your story, but your letters of recommendation are also important because they're kind of a fact checker of everything that you've said. You know, you go into your essays and you say, all of these things happened to me and I believe in this and I'm good across, you know, these attributes. And BYU's like, great, well, everyone can tell a story, you know, and anyone can tell a good story. So the letters of recommendation are how they validate that everything you're saying about you is true, that you do have the potential and the trajectory that you think you do. And so they're really important as that kind of third person perspective, but down to the specifics of the application, we wouldn't be able to help you there. Harper's, what's your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So like on the application, I noticed a section about activities. Would it be okay to write about like something that you wrote about in the essay as well?
Yes, we did our last session was only on activities. So I'll send my email in the chat. If you guys have not gotten, you should get an email after this with the recording. I think it's usually sent within 24, 48 hours. If you have not, if you're not getting our emails for some reason, check your spam. And if you haven't, I'll send my email in the chat. Send me an email that you did not get the recordings and I will send them to you. So watch that, Harper's. The short answer is yes, if it's distinct enough that it's like a different angle, or if your learning was different, or if you have like different stories for it. So it's usually discouraged because you want to show as much of yourself and what you've done as possible, but you definitely can if you have distinct enough experiences to go off of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Chelsea, what is your question?
To seminary teachers, could I have one of them write my seminary recommendation and could I have the other write my third recommendation?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad. Hopefully that means you're doing well in seminary.
Better than I did, at least. Mitchell would have hated me as a student. Chelsea, I think it's the same thing that we've been saying is that there's not necessarily a wrong recommender, again, outside of friends and family, but again, is that seminary teacher the person that knows you best and is the most willing to be able to hype you up? If yes and yes, totally ask your seminary teacher. Ashton, we'll get to you in one sec. There's one in the chat that I want to say. Someone asked, Anything specific we should include as we approach and ask those we're asking for a recommendation for? Mitchell, do you remember any of the language that you used in that in-person meeting when you were asking for whether the recommender would write you a letter?
Ask that again, sorry.
Yeah, I'm mostly curious for that in-person meeting of when you actually ask your recommender whether they will write the letter. A, is there anything that you would make sure is included in that conversation? And then my second part of the question is, yeah, do you remember anything about the language of how you asked that question?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really important just to set expectations and gauge how much they know about BYU. Obviously, there are people that will know what the aims are. Maybe they've heard of them before, but it's been years and years, right? So I would make sure that that first interaction is, like Amelia said earlier, try and gauge their reaction, see if they seem excited to be able to write this for you, and if they can think of specific examples or highlight specific characteristics. I would probably just talk to them about, these are the strengths that I see in myself. This is what I'm writing about in my essays. Um, if you wouldn't mind thinking about these specific experiences or how you've seen these strengths in me, that's what I would like you to highlight in my recommendation. And I'll, of course, send you a prep doc with much more information about what more I expect and hope to get out of this recommendation letter.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I would add is lead with gratitude. These teachers in seminary, they have to write a lot of recommendations. They have a lot of students. So I love what Mitchell said about like being specific about why you are asking them, like why are they your choice? I think going in with that and saying, hey, Mr. Let's see, what was one of I'm trying to remember the teacher I asked. Hey, Mr. Malega, I have so enjoyed your class. I think this is my favorite class. I've really enjoyed getting to know you. I think I have had experiences here that I would love to highlight in my application. If it's all right with you, I would be so thankful if you'd be willing to write my letter of recommendation for my college applications. I'm applying to BYU. That's my top choice school. I will prepare a letter of I'll prepare a prep doc for you to support you in your writing process. But is that something that you'd be willing to do? That's how I would approach that conversation.
Yeah.
Abby. Sorry, what was that, Mitchell?
Well done. I applaud that.
It's got to go way back at those memory troves. Addie, what's your question?
My question is if we have written essays about a sport, can we use a coach as a recommendation, or is that touching on the same topic too much?
I think you can still use them. I wouldn't worry about touching on a topic too much if it's a true strength of yours, right? And if you have multiple experiences that back the idea of this is my strength, I think that's wonderful. So I would
Okay,
definitely use that example.
thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, also Mitchell mentioned your recommendation supporting your essays. That's one way to do it. I did this. I had an essay that I talked about volleyball, and then my volleyball coach was my recommender. It's also there are different perspectives again, right? Your essay should be, what do you think about that? Like, how did that sport change you? How did engaging with that sport? I don't know what essay you're talking about the sports with, but how did engaging with that sport make you a better person and a better applicant for BYU? It's like your story with that sport. Whereas the recommender is going to say, here's how I see Addie, here's my perspective outside in. And I have often found that with it's so much more about who you are and not about the activity. So you're totally fine.
Okay, thank you.
Fallon, go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so for one of my essays, for the first topic, I'm gonna talk about how like reading has like made me lose focus and stuff like that. Like I lose track of time while reading, but then also for my activities in the last session we talked about like the different like qualifications for that, and also like so I've read 70 books this year, so I was gonna talk about how like I've read so many books, but also should I do that in relation to also doing the essay for reading?
Yeah, I think that's totally fine, and it's cool to throw out that number because that is a high number. Nice job. But I would make sure that you highlight how that's affected you and how that's changed you. I think it's always fascinating to hear, yes, people have read so many books, but what have you extracted from these books, and how are you different because you read this book? And I think diving into an example of a specific book may be really easy to write an essay about.
Awesome, thank you.
Can't wait to read that essay, Fallon. I wish I was the admissions officer reading it. Yeah, I think like what is there a specific line from those 70 books or a chapter or a character? Like you have a lot of examples to pull from. Sarah, go for it.
I heard that it's like a good idea to like get with your like college admissions rep and like maybe have them read your essay. Is that like a thing still, or like a good idea?
Yes, you can. There, if you go online, there's like an admissions reps part of the admissions office, and you can find one. There are some limits to the help that they can give you. It's all for free, and they don't make any of the decisions, but it's a totally an excellent third person that for free will review your essays. Do you know anything more about that, Mitchell? You have any perspective?
Yeah, I just remember that there would be people that would come into the admissions office and ask for that, for a one-on-one sit-down time with an admissions rep, just because they thought that would give them a leg up, and it doesn't. But it can also solidify just someone's grade application, right? I think it will help you realize how you feel about BYU and if you feel like you'd be a good fit. And it will probably give you good validation about, hey, I agree that these are your strengths, and if you wrote about this and portrayed this story this way, that's a wonderful way to do it. But they're not going to critique it very in depth.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It is good. Like I would have someone read your essays. Ask your parent to read your essay and say, "Does this sound like me?" If you have like a writing teacher or someone, you don't want to spread your essays too thin because I think sometimes it dilutes your voice. You do want third person perspective, but if it's someone that knows what they're talking about, an admissions rep is good. For a little bit more in depth, you could like Leland coach, Mitchell will go really in the weeds with you. A writing teacher, someone that like can hear the language and knows you well and can say, "Hey, this sounds like Sarah. I believe that this is her essay," is a good idea. The other hack that people don't talk about enough is once you have your essays in a good place that you feel or you're feeling decent about, go outside, go somewhere alone, stand up and read your essay out loud. Standing up gives you, I don't know, it just like gives you energy or something. And reading it out loud allows you to hear the essay, I think, in a little bit of a third person perspective almost. It's just you're like hearing it in a different way than you would if you're reading it in your head. So if you haven't done so already, if you have a draft, read it out loud and you'll get a little bit more, I think, of what they'll hear.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's a great tip, and I would add, don't try and get this all done in one sitting. I would be intentional about making this a multiple day, maybe multiple weeks process, just so you can think about these essays and recommendations a lot. They should be really well written, and it's a huge piece of the application.
Awesome, thanks.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Raise your hand if you have any more questions. Let's see. There are a few in the chat. People are asking. Okay, this is a good one. How much of the letter of rec is the individual's opinion of you? Is it a survey type thing, or is there an opportunity for them to type and describe you and the experiences that they have had with you?
Yes, so they do have a few tickers that they need to check off, right? We went through that earlier in the session. But yes, there is that open-ended question, but that's all that they get, right? So again, make sure that you talk to them and figure out what they're going to highlight. If there's a specific story that you want them to share, make sure you set that expectation. And I don't think there's any issue with having some back and forth discussions about, this is what I would like to write about, but I'm not sure if you have something better, and if they do, make sure it's all right with you. Give the recommenders an opportunity to have a back and forth feedback discussion almost about what they're writing.
Love it. Someone asked, does the teacher have to be your junior, senior year? Can it be a sophomore year teacher who I still talk to every day? The high school one, the core high school one does have to be junior, senior. That's something that they specify in the application. If you're really close to a teacher though, and you're talking to him every day, that could be a great other recommender. Would you agree, Mitchell?
Yeah, absolutely. I think teachers can be great recommenders.
Okay, we probably have time for 1 to 2 more questions. So get your last questions in and then we will wrap up. Let's see. Someone asked in the letter prep doc that we went through, we had them, you say the application deadline. Mitchell, have you seen with clients someone was asking, do I need to move that deadline up? Like, should I give my recommenders a fake deadline in order to make sure that they submit the application on time? Have any of your clients struggled with this? Is that something you'd recommend?
I think there are plenty of people that have issues with procrastinating. But yes, you can change that prep doc to say whatever you want. If you want it done by October 1st, just change it and put October 1st. Whatever you feel comfortable with. I would say though that being persistent with following up is really important, because although they can do this in one sitting, although you will not, they will probably do it rather quickly. You just want to make sure that they've thought about it enough. So don't be afraid to reach out to them and follow up regularly. I would say weekly isn't bad.
Yeah, agreed. Also, teachers, they do this every year. They know the drill. So you can ask them to check in with you or submit with you once they have been submitted, but they know the drill. I think BYU might send alerts also. I think this is a good question of what if my recommender isn't a great writer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think finding a great writer is important, but also we have some great technology all around us, and I would recommend that they figure out how to use that to their advantage. I think I'll leave it at that.
That's great. Yeah, as Mitchell said too, the thing that matters here is that they know you and that they feel passionately about your potential and your fit with BYU. And so even if the language isn't as polished as you would like it to be, that emotion, those stories will come through regardless. So is it nice if they're a good writer? Sure. It's also a plus. Like the bare minimum is that they love you, they're gonna write you a good recommendation, and they know you well. Anything else is a cherry on top. Sarah, bring us home.
This is kind of just going with what you were just saying, but I have a teacher from last year who really, really likes me, and I did really well in his class and everything. But he is not the most educated sounding person, and a lot of the stuff that he would write on the board, there would be typos, there would be grammar errors. He's a great person though, and I know that he really, really likes me. But I also have an English teacher this year who she likes me fine, but she just doesn't know me very well. And so, but I know that she could write something very flowery and very nice sounding. But she just doesn't know me as well. But I just don't know if it would come across as well with someone who doesn't have that polished kind of thing, which is kind of what you were just saying. But if it's between someone two people who like me, but one who really, really likes me versus one who just is more indifferent-ish, I guess. I don't know.
This is what I would tell you. If first of all, go up to the English teacher and start getting to know them. Make sure that they get to know you and start building that relationship. But also with the other teacher, make sure that the authenticity comes through, and it will. They are not the person that is being admitted to BYU, so their grammar doesn't need to be perfect. As long as they can vouch for you and that you're exceptional, I think that's the most important thing. They're not looking for perfect grammar or really well structured essays in these recommendations.
Yeah.
I think
One other thing that I'd add, Sarah, is I had one client who was super, super worried about this, and I actually worked with the teacher. The teacher wrote the draft recommendation and then sent it to me as the coach. The client did not see it. There was no conflict of interest with the client, but the teacher sent me the recommendation, and I checked for grammar and spelling, and didn't change any of the words, but suggested maybe order of operations and said, do you have an example here? So that's not common, but it is possible, and so you could do that if you're really worried about grammar and spelling, is potentially have a coach or someone that you trust be a mediator and just review the application that's not you, because otherwise ethical concerns. Okay, awesome. Mitchell, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah. I appreciate you all for joining. Again, we've shared this prep document, and I think that will be truly a game changer. I know that these recommendations can sometimes feel like an afterthought, or maybe they're just the last thing you're thinking of because you don't have to do too much after you wrap up your essays. But they're a key piece of the application. So just do them well, as we've suggested, and I think you'll have some great recommendations. Again, don't procrastinate. I've seen way too many people just have late applications, or wait until the deadline, and it's not good for you as an applicant to wait until the very end. So get it in as soon as possible. If it would be helpful for you to talk with someone after you've perhaps talked with their parents or other trusted loved ones, get a coach, and it will be helpful to talk to someone that has done this before many times. And yeah, good luck to you all. I hope you're excited about this process, and I hope it works out great for all of you.
Thanks so much, Mitchell. Like with all of the hosts of this boot camp, please join me in thanking Mitchell. They are here just because they want to help you guys with this BYU application. So Mitchell, so appreciate your time. Guys, this is the last BYU boot camp session. We hope it was helpful. It's so much fun to do this as BYU alumni. We love BYU. We love this process. And we love helping you guys succeed. And the lights just went out in my building, so it's good timing. Thanks for being here. We're rooting for you. My application or my email I've sent a couple times, amelia@joinleland.com. If you want Coach Rex, if you have any questions about the application, if you just need a hype woman, send me an email. We're the whole team, Leland coaches and our internal team are here to support you. We really just want you to succeed. And we'll do what we need to help you get there. Best of luck with the application. They're hard. Like, take a moment and tap yourselves on the back for being here and for doing this. And go Cougs. Hopefully we have a good football season this year, huh, Mitchell?